Out there in YouTube land, Dan here from Geekcast Radio, doing another one of my Marvel Fresh Start reviews where I go through all the major Marvel Fresh Start relaunches and answer two key questions. Number one, is it any good? Number two, is it in fact a fresh start? Today, I will be discussing the new Doctor Strange number one, or Doctor Strange 391, depending on the titles that you want to go by. This is written by Mark Waid with art by Jesus Saez, and I probably pronounced that incorrectly, so I do apologize. I went into this book, I would say, probably with more apprehension than most of the Marvel Fresh Start titles. I've never read a Doctor Strange book consistently until Jason Aaron took over the book. I love what he did with Doctor Strange. He took away magic from Doctor Strange, which seems like how exactly, can you write a Doctor Strange book without magic? But by doing that, I think you took the thing that defined him as a character and in a way allowed him to grow a lot more. And you got to see the ingenuity of Doctor Strange and showing that, he has aspects to him beyond just whatever random spell he could, spat out at any time and place. And the hard thing to do with magic too is that, magic requires its own set of rules. And how do you establish stakes with magic when you also have superheroes and things of that nature that work on a different playing field? And by limiting what he can do by having magic have a cost to it, so it wasn't that he could just do whatever spell he wanted to do at any time. There was actually a cost there, and I thought that was a theme that has kind of carried throughout. And even when Donny Cates took over to the Deception run, I like the approach and take on that as well. Now that Mark Waid's going on this, it seems I don't know if he was going to follow that through. I like Mark Waid as a writer. Sometimes I really love what he just does. I love his run currently on Captain America, but with Doctor Strange, I wasn't sure. Doctor Strange to me can be sometimes too unapproachable of a character, a little too dry. He usually is good as a team member or that random guest star. But I thought until Donny Cates and really Jason Aaron kind of reimagine the personality of him, I never really felt that he was a character that I was all that invested in. So I was my biggest concern going in was Mark Waid would write more of that type of Strange that doesn't typically appeal to me. Overall, I will say that first impressions is I do really enjoy the art. It's got more of a painterly quality to it than I was expecting going into it. But I guess it kind of does make sense. I do like right in the opening, we get the classic Doctor Strange costume, which we don't really see all that much anymore. Great little looking creature, and specifically really enjoyed this one scene where we see actually Doctor Strange trying to repair this universe by legitimately sewing it up like a surgeon, which at first I'm like, that's a little heavy-handed. I mean, yes, I get it that Doctor Strange has this surgeon background, but by putting it in the forefront by legitimately referencing it this way, is that a little much? But looking and reading through this book, it seems like it's actually perhaps foreshadowing to something that they might be diving in more, in the sense of this idea of identity goes throughout this issue, in the sense of, I think Mark Waid is approaching Doctor Strange, Stephen Strange, that he still identifies himself as a surgeon first. There's even a sequence in which he is about to fly that spaceship to get into space, and he's still apprehensive about flying or driving, because that is the act that took away who he was and took away his ability to be a surgeon. Even though he is this master of the mystical arts, he is this now infamous hero, he still is attached to that past life. And in this too, we see Doctor Strange begin to lose his magic again. You see Doctor Strange, he's unable to see magic like he once did. It seems like there's just something going wrong. And he ends up kind of even going back to regular civilian life, just hanging out, in coffee shops, again, having the classic look with, he doesn't have a goatee anymore, just the mustache. So as we saw in the last Donny Cates issue, but he feels like he still needs to go. And that's where he goes to Tony Stark, and Tony Stark gives him the idea to go into space, because Tony Stark's identity is to define and problems by finding solutions to them in the way that he knows best. And using his engineer mentality, he comes up with the idea of utilizing space to find more of these different magical trinkets that could possibly give him the power he once had. So that's really the bulk of this issue, is very much almost like a prelude of him getting into space. So, we don't really know exactly what that's going to portray. It was a little bit different than I was anticipating. I thought like going into this Doctor Strange in space, it would be like him going out to space, like dealing with cosmic beings like eternity and things of that nature. So I was kind of hoping we get more of that, but so far not so much. But so to look at, and I thought the writing, what I did like about it was very old school, but in a cool way, in the sense of we got the omniscient narrator back again, which is a style that is very rarely used. And it's almost like what is old is new again, because it's so rarely used. Seeing it in a book, I tended to appreciate it a little bit more. And again, it was able to focus in on the character of Doctor Strange and approach it a little bit differently. I did like the art overall. The painted quality was a little bit different, but I thought it kind of made sense for this book because of the characteristics of Doctor Strange. I'm curious to see where it goes from here. And but my biggest concern, kind of looking at, is this a fresh start book for Doctor Strange? Yes, and then very much no. Yes, in the sense of, if you've never read a Doctor Strange book, you can kind of pick this up and get everything you really need to know. No, in the sense of, this is approaching similar territory that really Doctor Strange has been dealing with since GCRN took it over. Like I mentioned, thematically, it very much is in line with where I felt like he finally completed that arc by the time issue 390 came up last month, where we saw him lose his magic, regain it, and become Doctor Strange again. Now it seems like we're refreshing it in the sense of going back to him not having his powers and trying to find himself once more. This is different, as it's more of an internal struggle where there isn't some extraneous force that took the power away from him. It's just something that's more psychological, like a baseball hitter that usually is like a 390 hitter suddenly can't hit the ball, and it's just something psychological is not working. They're in a slump. So to get out of slump, what do? You go to space, and that's what he's doing. So that's where I'm hesitant, like moving forward with this, is that we were just here and watched this journey already. Seeing it now go back again, it feels like we're treading raw water when it comes to the character. That was one of the biggest issues with Marvel, was that heroes weren't heroes. Like the heroes that we knew and loved, they were kind of gone, and they were replaced. And sometimes I thought the replacements worked, like with Thor, but ultimately it felt like a lot of them were treading water or just simply not there. Now with Doctor Strange, we're doing that again. So the design of this book is to be a fresh start. This to me doesn't necessarily seem that way. Now it's only the first issue. That could, by the second and third issue, we could see Doctor Strange being Doctor Strange again. But as this is, being an indication of where this title is headed, that has me hesitant more so than anything else. On the execution side, I think it was good. It was fine. It worked, but it to me was probably on the lower end of all the Marvel Fresh Start books going in. Now it did. I had, like I said, going into this, I had a lot of hesitation, and a lot of that hesitation wasn't necessarily realized. I do like Waid's characterization of Strange so far, although most of it is very isolated. We don't get a lot of like interaction back and forth outside of that with Tony Stark, which I did like that back and forth. Now that he's he's going to be heading up the story. I'm curious to say, I feel like issue 2 is going to tell us a whole lot, tell me a whole lot. If the book I'll continue with, or if it's a book I'll maybe put on the wayside and focus on other things. But I'm curious what other people thought of Doctor Strange. For those that did pick it up, him in space, did it get you interested at all? Are you curious to see where it goes forward? And I will be continuing my Marvel Fresh Start books. I think a big book coming out this week is Thor #1, which I'm super excited for. Although I don't think it'll be much of a fresh start, knowing that GCRN is keeping with the book. But hey, if it's not broke, why fix it, right? So if you want to listen more to me, you can do that by checking out this channel. Also, my podcast, Comic Concierge. But for now, remember that comics are for everyone. The key is finding the right one. Until next time, thanks for listening.